Welcome back. It's Sunday night. That means you're here with us at AFN Live. Tonight we have a show full of indoor and arena talk, starting with the IFL. We also have the NAL on the docket tonight. They have officially announced a team is returning for the 2020 season. We touched base a little bit on it before. We're going to touch base on it again. Also on tonight's show, we're going to discuss a little bit of the trademarks, legality issues. Some things sort of arose through the IFL with one of their expansion teams over the last week and a half. We are also going to discuss in the IFL coaching changes, something that we have discussed before. We discussed a little bit last week with Dixie Wooten leaving the Iowa Barnstormers. His name has popped up again as the Tucson Sugar Skulls have announced that he will be their head coach moving forward to the 2020 season. Dixie is a former two-time coach of the year. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Bryce, but I believe he's a two-time coach of the year of the IFL.
Yes.
Yes. The latest one coming in 2017?
I don't remember the years offhand.
Okay, all right, yeah. I know the 2017 was one. He is now he took a college job, a Division III school coaching position, I believe, and I think that Tucson is probably a little better fitted geographically for him because I believe it was in Texas. Bryce, I've been thinking a lot about this because Dixie is a head coach that caught my attention watching the IFL. He brings a certain intensity to the game. I just wanted to get your thoughts as far as what does this do in the IFL, if anything, as far as a shift of, power or the balance being shifted, down towards the southern teams, especially in Arizona, where the Sugar Skulls and the Rattlers kind of have this interstate rivalry.
It's interesting when you think about it as a shift of power. For me, I just kind of look at it as some of the natural volatility of the indoor game. And this was one of the ones that I didn't really see coming. It definitely caught me off guard in terms of him signing down there. But the thing is that Dixie Wooten's an IFL guy. He played in the IFL. He was a Pringle Award winner when he was there as a quarterback for Nebraska and as a quarterback with Wichita at the time. And the thing is that this is a guy that has done so much in terms of really kind of stabilizing and making sure that the IFL is worth watching. And with that, he now comes in as this coach and has been a great coach for Iowa this entire time and just done a lot about making sure that the Iowa Barnstormers brand, the name is good stuff. And it didn't work out there ultimately for him. I know that he's got some other stuff that's going on with both I believe it's his son that's down playing for the University of Houston right now. He took a job at a junior college in Houston as well. And now he's got the opportunity to play, to coach with a team that might just be a little bit easier on his schedule and really kind of do some stuff in there that I think is interesting stuff right now in terms of providing good quality coaching for Tucson. I think it just worked out for the Sugar Skulls more in their favor than it is necessarily a shift of power.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's can't be stated enough is that, a lot of these coaches, a lot of these players, they have second jobs, they have, careers, they kind of do this, on the side. They make some money doing it and kind of build themselves through these leagues. Dixie seems to be one of those guys that's kind of been, he's been trying to be the glue to the IFL. But I have to ask the question, if there's rumors of Nebraska moving to Dallas are true, and with his ties to that Nebraska organization, I know it's a different ownership group now, or potentially, how come, or why didn't we see him maybe hold out a little bit longer to possibly look at signing with Dallas, assuming that they're going to need a head coach, where he's took a job in Houston, and Dallas is right there in the same state.
I think a lot of it has to do with what are you expecting out of the franchise. And with Nebraska potentially moving, if it doesn't move, then I think it's too dangerous of a situation to not have a job. And with Tucson, you know that you're going to have a job because its owner is Kevin Guy, and Kevin Guy is going to make sure that that franchise is up and running. He did have the opportunity to travel down to Tucson, see what it does to actually play in that arena. It was one of his former players and members of his coaching staff that was the head coach there last year. So, I mean, there's a number of things of why he is tied to that Tucson organization that I think are just more comfortable. And that's something, too, that I think is a big deal, is that comfort, because of the volatility involved with the game as itself, is a little frustrating to find. You don't necessarily see that in every opportunity. And I think that the security, the understanding, the expectations are all very clear cut, making the most uncomfortable thing about the job is the changing climate going from Iowa, Nebraska, all the way down to Tucson, basically on the Mexican border there. So it's going to be a little bit of a different environment for them in terms of the city and the culture and stuff like that. But in terms of job security, this was a safe move.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I definitely think that is something that Dixie probably took a lot into as far as him wanting to be in the IFL, him wanting to be again, being part of that glue that's going to hold that league together to bring, a brand, a mainstay like he did with Iowa, where he was, the coach there for a while. RJ Ciancio is here. RJ, we're talking a little bit about Dixie Wooten right now and his move from the Iowa Barnstormers over to Tucson. I did it again. Over to Tucson in with the Sugar Skulls taking the head coaching job there. As this move, from Iowa to Tucson, what's the expectations that we should expect from the Sugar Skulls here moving forward with Dixie there?
First thing I think that Tucson's going to do next year is make the playoffs. They were in the hunt this year as an expansion team. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go 1 or 2 games into the playoffs because Wooten is an amazing coach and the team is already pretty well-rounded. So to see them not do well will be a surprise for me. I get the change of scenery. They might stumble week 1, week 2, but to not see them in the playoffs would be a stunner to me.
Yeah, that's my expectations for this team too as well. Personally, I think that this is where I talked a little bit earlier about the shift, of power down to Tucson. This is something that I think can't be understated here as far as Dixie's coaching ability is concerned and his ability to bring out the best in his players and his team. And I think that that's something that he's going to bring to the Sugar Skulls. Do you agree, Bryce, that this is going to be a playoff contending team and possibly maybe a championship contender team? Let's throw it out there. Way too early 2020 prediction, but I want to hear your thoughts on this.
They are not a contender for 2020 championship, but the thing is right now, I think Tucson was a squad that had 1 or 2 scenarios that cost them games. They should have won the game against Iowa to begin with, and that was one that came much aligned, per se, when realizing that it took a blown holding call for Iowa to beat Tucson on the road. So Tucson probably should have had that game, and quite frankly, if for Tucson to be in the playoffs last year as the number 6 seed, instead of because they did beat out Quad City that last game, it was a win and you're in scenario for either of those teams and potentially both of them, because honestly, if Nebraska didn't beat Iowa the last week, then they would have been out of the playoffs and Quad Cities would have moved in based on tiebreakers. So with all that said, Tucson is a squad that needs to know how to close out, and Tucson is a squad that needs to figure out what they're doing in the special teams game. They lost probably 3 games this year because of bad special teams play. And when you think about what they were able to do with Medlock and Barrett, when you think about what they were able to do in the passing game on defense, kind of really slowing down opponents' drives and forcing them to move the chains consistently, there's a lot of progress and a lot of hope for this Tucson team before you even brought in a guy like Wooten. If anything, I think you actually have the exact opposite of what you guys are thinking of, where I think that bringing in a guy like Wooten, there's a good chance that he may actually cause more problems and kind of upset the apple cart too much to the point that the wheels fall off. And if that's the case, then it may be a rough start for them this year, but I don't expect San Diego to improve enough to be really competitive out in that area. I don't expect Oakland to be competitive enough to be a postseason team. And I don't think that they're going to see enough. I don't think they're going to see enough of some of the teams that we expect to be bad from the Midwest to really kind of upset what their win-loss record was going into this year. So I think this first year is going to be pretty much get used to everything, feel each other out, and essentially just kind of being right where they need to be.
Well, this poses you brought up 2 interesting points for me here. The first one I'm just going to ask you, you don't need to indulge in any further. You said that the Sugar Skulls had some issues as far as closing out games and special teams and things like that last year. Does Dixie Wooten solidify that into being able to coach them up enough to eliminate those mistakes?
No.
Okay.
And that's not a shot at Dixie Wooten. I think that's more along the lines of the arena. That's one of the shortest barns in all of the IFL, and there were a lot of very flat kicks. And when they got a different kicker, some of those things worked itself out initially. Okay. So some of that is just kicking style. The other one with Iowa, that was a blown call by the official, even to a point where league officials admitted to it. But before that, it was really a blocked field goal return for a touchdown that kind of sparked Iowa's comeback to begin with. So I think a lot of it has to do with the shape of the barn and the type of kicking that's required in that place. You really start to have to make sure that ball gets to midfield, or you've got to start learning to purposely kick it in the stands just as a punt type of scenario where you're purposely missing your kicks just to get it out of that part of the field.
Okay. And the other thing you mentioned that, you went to the opposite side where you felt like that Dixie was going to be more or less the type that's going to ruffle some feathers or maybe upset the dynamic down there. Is that going to be because it's similar to like I guess the best analogy would be the New England Patriot way, when a coach leaves New England and wants to bring that way to a team in the NFL. Is it going to be something similar to that, where he's just going to be like, I don't care who you are, I don't care what your name is, you're going to play the way that I want to be played, or I'll find somebody who can. Is that what you were alluding to there, or is it just you just think that it might just be a little more? Go ahead.
I think it's a little iffy, because now when you think of a coach with that amount of clout back that was playing against a guy like Kevin Guy, it's going to be a really interesting dynamic to try to figure that whole situation out inside one front office. And coaching isn't necessarily a front office job, but at the exact same time, at this level, everything's a front office job when you're at this level of indoor football, because everybody's got to be all hands on deck, every position on the field or off the field. And so when I think about the possibility of, maybe coming in there and being a little rigid, that's definitely a possibility. I don't know if it's going to be the case or not. I think the thing is that when talking about Tucson, the way that it was presented, Tucson really didn't seem to be that big of a problem child for me in terms of being a team that didn't belong. They were definitely a playoff team. They didn't have the consistency on the outside. I guess they didn't really have a deep ball threat really at wide receiver. And I really kind of thought that their linebackers were a little undersized because pretty much whenever you had the running attack against them, that was a more traditional running attack and not the RPO that had really started to showcase itself in the IFL this season. They struggled to not fall backwards and allow those extra 2 yards by not being able to muscle a guy down. Those are kind of the smaller things that they needed to work on, but they weren't necessarily a problem child team like Bismarck when they first started, Cedar Rapids when they ended the year. Those teams had problems that they had to work on, and one of them worked on it and one of them got worse. And so it's all just kind of a basic aspect of it, of what are you going to do and how easy are you able to work with other people. And I think that might actually be more of a situation right off the bat where you see the team kind of struggle and then come back at the end of the season, because when Mark Stout came back this year for Cedar Rapids, he tried that hard-nosed line, old school Vince Lombardi, yell at everybody style of football, and it blew up in his face, something fierce. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the thought process that I think is there right now, is how flexible is Wooten going to be with the properties that he already has in Tucson, and how does that move itself forward? I think that's kind of the big issue there. And I think a guy like Dixie Wooten is at least smart enough to realize that he's got to play well with others. I think the question is is it going to be, where are the lines drawn in the sand? Because if the lines, if everybody's got a different line in the sand that they draw, you're essentially creating a plane that's going to uphold the team. But if everybody's line in the sands are always parallel, then things are going to fall through the cracks. A lot of malindromes today in my analysis. Right. Just a lot of mixed phrasings.
Yeah, so many. RJ, real quick, before we head to break, you appeared to kind of disagree with that comment as far as Dixie maybe upsetting the dynamic. After listening to Bryce, does it change your opinion at all, or do you still think that it's going to be kind of a harmonious marriage there?
It's not going to be harmonious, but I don't think he's going to disrupt things in a necessarily completely negative way for two reasons. One, I think Wooten has the best interest in mind. I think he's good at executing that. And two, there's not a ton to disrupt for a second-year team right now. Yes, a lot goes on behind the scenes, and I get that, and I fully appreciate that when that goes well. But it isn't like, if you're taking over a Sioux Falls Storm with a, over 20-year history of football, that you're going to ruffle feathers, say that sometimes fast. You're not going into Sioux Falls or Omaha and the CIF to ruffle feathers there. This is a relatively new team, so he can mold it into his own image. It might rub a few people the wrong way, but I don't think it's overall going to be a bad thing.
310-876-8064. Give us a call if you have any thoughts as far as the Sugar Skulls and the Dixie Wooten marriage that's happening down there. At AFN Talk across all social media, afntalk.com, afn.net. And we are presented to you tonight by primetimesportstalk.com. We're going to take a quick break. After the break, we're going to touch base on some trademark issues between the IFL and the FFL.
The Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.
Welcome back to AFN Live. I'm your host, Michael Washington Weeks. 310-876-8064. Before the break, we were discussing Dixie Wooten's move from the Iowa Barnstormers down to the Tucson Sugar Skulls. At AFN Talk across all social media, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts about that move. Last week, we brought up expansion. They announced the team name for the expansion IFL indoor football team out of Oakland, co-owned by Marshawn Lynch down there. they released the name as the Oakland Panthers. Now, I brought up the question about the Freedom Football League. Now, before I move further, I don't think anybody who's been following the Freedom Football League really has a lot of hope that this league plays it down. I think that we all would like to see them play it down, but I don't think there's a lot of optimism that they're going to. But one of their proposed franchises out of Oakland is the Oakland Panthers, which happens to be the same team name as the Oakland Panthers of the IFL. Now, the trademark is owned to the IFL, but it was a little it was patent for indoor football. Bryce, you touched base a little bit about the trademark last week in this situation. The Oakland Panthers Freedom Football League, the FFL Panthers, tweeted that they are looking into the legality behind this because they are unhappy with being tagged and other things on social media as far as this is concerned. What else can you tell us? Would they be able to file an outdoor patent or trademark of sorts, or is that just going to be too close to the line?
Well, I mean, if they wanted to try to get an outdoor trademark for it, then, I mean, theoretically they could try it. But I think what's more important about this is that a team that thought that they had gotten there first didn't do anything legally to actually do that. And now they're upset that they didn't follow the rules. This is unquestionably a silly matter. And yeah, they're looking into anything that they can do, which is nothing.
Right. Exactly.
So that's ultimately what it comes down to. And so here's the deal about why teams like the FFL or leagues like the FFL is kind of frustrating is that when we look at the NGL and we look at all the old logos that they stole for this, when we look at the EIF, and the EIF, the majority of the teams do not have the copyrights involved with that. When we talk about this new AIF league that everybody says is going to be equal, if not better than the NAL, it's a load of garbage because nobody's actually setting up their teams with any longevity. And so this is 100% the situation was when people theorized that there would be groups here, then yeah, it's great that Oakland's got a franchise in this league because not only is the FFL looking to fill outdoor spaces in a market that lost its team due to relocation, but the Freedom Football League also has a lot of connection to African American communities, which Oakland unquestionably is. And so for the cultural aspects, it would be important. Now, this is where there's a real interesting aspect of things that I guarantee you has not been brought up at this time, is that there is zero explanation of any kind of protection typically for the Panthers name that the FFL can try to go into. And so the FFL is not in a place where they can have a winning argument about this. And that deals with cultural knowledge and understanding of the Panther name. And that name is so important to the community, and it's got these kind of overwhelming aspects with everything about some of the smaller groups and the semi-pro names and everything else. You know, that's important for an area, and you see it in some other places too, where you have like a unique group where everybody's this or everybody's that. Everybody's the Wildcats in Arizona. They're the Junior Wildcats or the Cats or the Bearcats or some kind of offshoot of that. And that's because culturally they all say that that's something that's important to them. And the more that it goes into the general cultural understanding, the less and less you actually have the ability to trademark or copyright it, because it's so much in public domain based on cultural appropriation and cultural understanding that no person can come in and take that over. It's basically as something as silly as trying to go in there and copywriting Duval for Jacksonville fans, because it doesn't matter which team in Jacksonville has it or is playing that day. Everybody's screaming Duval. Because why? Because that was the name of the county that the city of Jacksonville basically just said, we're bigger than you are, and kind of took over Duval County and made it all the city of Jacksonville. And so that kind of understanding with the Panthers is exactly what's going on over there in Oakland right now. Honestly, at this point, the FFL, if they're ever going to play it down, should scrap the name altogether and pick up the Warriors, or they should try to pick up something else that might have some kind of connection to that area that I think would be a big aspect. Now, the other thing, too, just to kind of throw in one last example of why this is such a big deal is I don't know if anybody around here is a Marvel fan, but the movie Black Panther started out with ties to Oakland because of that extra little case of understanding what the Panthers meant in Oakland,
absolutely.
what the Black Panthers meant in Oakland, back in civil rights movements. Just so many different ways that it overlaps in itself in pop culture and historical culture that if the FFL ever tries to combat this, all they're going to do is make everybody lose.
Yeah, I don't understand how you propose the league, you release the names, and then you don't get the trademark. It baffles me. It absolutely baffles me. It was so mind-bogglingly stupid on their part not to go get the Panthers name at all. RJ, we discussed this a little bit, and we agreed that the FFL doesn't have a leg to stand on here. You brought the tweet to our attention. I laughed hysterically at it. This seems like it might be just a little too late here for the FFL if they ever do decide to play it down, huh?
Well, first of all, I want the FFL to play it down. Not only is it an alternative league, but they put that coveted Connecticut team in place.
Oh yeah, of course.
But that's not. But no, back to the topic. I just felt I had to plug my Connecticut team. We have nothing to rep in our state yet, so.
Central Connecticut State almost beat Eastern Michigan.
Almost. Anyway, so with the FFL, what baffles me, and you said it, Michael, ESPN released an article on the FFL being announced on December 6th, 2018. It took until August 29th of 2019 for the Panthers to file their trademark. So you're telling me in that entire time you couldn't find stadiums that anyone knows about? You couldn't file trademarks for names? What makes us take you seriously now? Right now you sound like a bunch of former players who want to do something. It's like when people say, you know, when I'm older, I'm going to buy a huge mansion, and then you work at Walmart or you work it doesn't add up. It's saying 2 + 2 = 7. What you're doing doesn't add up. And,
well, if it was Common Core math, it might work.
But, I want the FFL to do well, but scrap the Panthers name. There's no need to bring down the entire ship here, like Bryce said, because just because you can't have it doesn't mean nobody can. And I'm sick and tired of that mentality in sports. If the FFL ever wants to play it down, find a different name. Heck, I don't even know where they're going to play in Oakland. I assume it would be the Almada Coliseum, but they haven't said anything. There's almost no social media presence. The website is about as bare bones as you can get. The reason it got any traction is because it was Ricky Williams and some of his buddies saying, hey, let's start a league, when they could probably invest in a product that's already there and not have to worry about the XFL and alternative spring leagues. Because when I was thinking about the FFL, I'm like, great, you're competing this back before the American Patriot League was proven to be basically non-existent and vaporware almost. I was thinking, great, you're going to compete with 2 other spring leagues. This makes no sense. Again, I wish it would do well, but looking into the trademark, it says entertainment services, namely indoor football games, entertainment services in the nature of organizing and presenting indoor football games before live audiences and on television, radio, webcasts, and global computer networks.
Why did you change your voice?
I don't know. I want to sound pompous, okay?
Well, the thing is that the reason why it's written like that, and a lot of people don't understand why those forms are written the way that they are, and it's done specifically so that way, in case if you have two separate groups, they can both act well and understanding within their own thing. So, like that kind of goes back to the initial question of can you have an outdoor or Oakland Panthers, and theoretically you could. I mean, but really more of what those are meant for is for high schools, for Special Olympics,
Yes.
for neighborhood intramural teams or like city league teams. Because I mean, city league teams, depending on where you're at, you've got some great ball. Whether that's baseball, basketball. I mean, if you ever get a chance to go watch box lacrosse pickup games in Vancouver, that is amazing with some of the people that you got there. So to have all those things available just for that trademark, it allows a separation from people that are actively trying to make money off of a situation and those that are just looking for some kind of identity aspect for their fun little thing that they do. And that's why it's written like that. Now, the thing is that you're looking for another group that's going to try to make money in something similar, which is the reason why it won't look as nice for the Oakland Panthers of the FFL compared to the Oakland Panthers of the IFL. But if they want to investigate what they're going to be, what they can do, it's going to be mostly getting laughed at. Because this was a boneheaded decision and they don't have anything else. And I think just as a nice little side comment thing, I do think that it's very interesting that a group that came in with Ricky Williams and everything else got upended in the local market by a group that was partially financed by Marshawn Lynch. I think that there's a very interesting connection there that kind of talks about what the legacy of a player can really do, because Ricky Williams is also a great philanthropist in a lot of ways, and he's given back to every city that has meant a lot to him, whether it's been Baltimore or Miami or Toronto, or even a little bit with New Orleans. And so when you look at what he's done as a person, he's a perfectly great guy, but just started smoking pot a little bit too early before everybody could kind of get into it. And then you got Marshawn Lynch, who started off his career rough. Kyle Busch went out there and pulled a Marshawn Lynch this last week at last week's races, literally saying, "I'm only here to not get fined twice," when dealing with a tough post-race interview. The guy's got legend for other aspects, but the guy also has shown so many different ways as being quirky and giving back to his community. I think when you get a chance to compare and contrast two guys like that, that meant so much for football and so much outside of the game, I think there's a cool comparison factor there that I just wish wasn't so steadfast about the stupidity of others, which is 100% the case here in dealing with not getting that situation set up or doing what they should have done, which is FFL_Oakland, very similar to what we saw from the different screen names and handles for the XFL teams or the AAF teams when they were starting up. That would have been perfectly fine for the FFL team too, where they could have let this just slip away without a problem.
Yeah, and the other thing is I want to mention the FFL also gained a little bit of mainstream because of the business model, the way that they wanted to approach it, the investments behind it to get the teams going. I agree with you, RJ, that I think that they made a mistake trying to, I don't want to say rush it, but it feels like everything was kind of like at first kind of being rushed. They rushed the names out. And they kind of been pushing this whole, original 50 or original 500, investors into the league, which is something that I don't think a lot of people have gotten behind per se. I think there's enough of an interest for it that I think everybody wants the FFL to be able to play it down and have some level of success. It's just at this particular moment in time, it doesn't appear that this is going to, launch, unfortunately. 310-876-8064 Give us a call if you have any questions about the FFL, the IFL, the Oakland Panthers name, at AFN Talk across all social media, afntalk.com, afnn.net, and we're presented to you tonight by primetimesportstalk.com. We're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we're going to discuss some positive news out of the NAL with the return of a team. I'll see you on the other side of the break.
The Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.
Welcome back to AFN Live, 310-876-8064. Before the break, we were discussing the Oakland FFL trademark name, I guess issue, non-issue, whatever you want to call it. Give us a call. Let us know what your thoughts are on it. I'm your host, Michael Washington Weeks, at AFN Talk across all social media, afntalk.com, afnn.net. Tonight, we have, well, I guess this week, we have the official word. A few weeks ago, we touched base that the Maine Mammoths of the NAL that did not participate in the 2019 season, they took a hiatus, was going to be coming back for the 2020 season. The National Arena League has officially announced the return of the Maine Mammoths for the 2020 season. With everything that happened at the end of the year for the NAL between their two expansion teams with Orlando and New York, this is welcome news. This is a breath of fresh air. I know there's a lot of fans, especially up here in Maine. We are excited as far as the alternative football fans up this way are concerned. RJ, as a New York Streets fan, I will say, or a New York Streets follower, I should say, what are your thoughts on this? Is this a breath of fresh air for the NAL? And obviously they needed some sort of good news, and this is perceived to be good news for the league and for the Mammoths, actually.
Definitely think it's good news. I mean, I was pretty upset when the Maine Mammoths said they were suspending operations for a year, because a lot of that time, as you hear that, you realize it's a polite way of saying, we're going to be put down. And that's something you want to hear, no matter the sport, no matter what facet of life it is. And making it so I was kind of depressed going into the season. Now, the fact that they came back is great in itself. So it's up to the people of Portland, Maine to show up and show out, because they were vocal on social media all year saying they want the team back. And I'm happy about that. But now you got to show it as much as you did talk it. And that's going to be important. What it means for NAL, I said it last time we talked about this, I could see divisions. If you put a team in, Manchester, New Hampshire, heck, I don't know if you're kind of crazy, go to Glens Falls, New York, somewhere in the northern part of the U.S., northeastern part of the U.S., you could say, all right, so Maine, Pirates, Streets, some other team will be the North Division, and then the Cobras, Lions, Sharks, Predators, South Division. Some realignment that way would help cut down travel costs, and it would, in my mind, divisions always help a league out. It makes me think that it helps build rivalries. Like the Sharks Predators rivalry, for example, carried over from the AFL. We haven't had naturally grown NAL rivalry yet. There's some in the making, but there's nothing that's really there yet, and divisions will help do that. So I'm hoping that we get divisions this year. I know when the Streets were first announced, it was rumored, it was said they were going to have East and Western divisions, which I was kind of confused by, and that never came to be. But the point is, people are looking at ideas for that, and, I'm hoping something comes of it. If not, and it's just, the Nashville Cats coming back, like the trademark is out already, I'm hoping that's the case, then you could try to maybe do a coastal division, an inland division, something, you could figure it out. But something does need to be done alignment-wise, in my opinion.
Now, Bryce, RJ brings up a point about divisions, and it would require another team inside the NAL to kind of have this happen. Expansion Talk, initially on their webpage, there was expansion opportunities. That got taken down shortly after the season. A lot of it pertained to the New York Street situation that happened in their game against Carolina. But with the Maine Mammoths coming back, it appears the NAL is moving forward with this. Is it likely that we're going to see a second team join the NAL, and would they do a division similar to what RJ's talking about to kind of help with the travel costs?
Well, I think the thing is understanding the NAL calendar, and I think with how bad things went down, with how bad Jeff Bushey just completely submarined the league that he helped create, he caused a lot of problems.
How do you really feel? How do you really feel, Bryce?
There's no other way. That out of all the things that I've probably said, that is probably the least warranted time that somebody has ever said, "How do you really feel?" There is unquestionable facts right now about how they've struggled in the NAL with how the ownership situation went down in Orlando, with how the New York Streets Westchester County Center was approved as a playable arena, that all directly related to Jeff Bushey. So I don't care. I mean, there's a lot of other people around the indoor leagues that I don't like, and there's a lot of other ones that get a lot of flack that I do and think that they deserve a little bit more. But I think the thing is that he submarined his own league, and it created problems that created struggles for New York and Orlando, and those are two franchises that are going in very, very different directions, and unfortunately neither of them seem to be the same path that the NAL as a league is taking. Now, Maine, on the other hand, Maine was one that had problems with getting local ownership, and for Rob Storm, who is involved heavily in the Carolina and a little bit more in a couple of other teams in the league, this was just something that he didn't have the money for, from my understanding of it all. And so he put the team on hiatus, and that's all good and dandy and whatever. But I do think that there is one thing to clarify quickly, and that is that I don't believe that the situations in New York and Orlando caused for those expansion franchise banner on the website to be taken down compared to the timeline that they have for the season. The application for expansion is passed for the 2020 season. So I think they just took it down because they're not accepting any more, and they won't look at any more new ones until next year. That said, if you were wanting to like if we wanted to start a team and shoot for 2021, they'd still talk to us. Right. But they're not openly advertising it like they are now. So as these teams start to make itself out, I think we'll find out more. I think the possibility of getting rid of Orlando is a real thing too. If they cannot, for some reason, get Kenny McIntyre out of ownership, and they've got to figure out what to do to deal with the league, then it's just no Orlando. So that the other opportunity in addition to adding a team is also losing a team, and so it's odd right now. Just because of the calendar, I think that there's plenty of opportunities for new teams to pop up. I think that there were a couple of trademarks to look at with the old Nashville Cats logo, whether the NAL was going to be the team that wins the race to Nashville, whether or not a team in Miami could possibly pop up, whether or not a team somewhere else in the Carolinas or West Virginia makes the jump. There's a couple of different opportunities there for the NAL. I think that there's plenty of time for them to make their moves, especially when you realize that the NAL was the last team to play their championship game and therefore entered into the off season the latest. But the thing is that they've named one team already. The AFL has not named a single team yet, even though they promised that they were going to do that at their championship game. And then they missed another deadline and another promise that they were going to announce somebody by now, and they really haven't. So I think they're right on pace for what it is, especially when kind of comparing them to the IFL and the NAL. They're right on pace, if not a little bit ahead. And compared to where they were last season or last off season, with missing some extra days and then having problems internally, thanks to some of the problems with Jeff Bushi and how that all translated out. I think there's a lot of sit back and wait and enjoy what the NAL is going to try to do right now.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that it was just I just think it's a natural occurrence to kind of start discussing possible expansion, and instead of looking at it from an add one team, subtract one team scenario. We know the Mammoth.
That's totally fair. I mean, the way that I see it with all of this right now is that, we really like talking about expansion, and there was one thing that's already reared its head so far in this show that I specifically hate about indoor football. It's one of the things that if I was to finally just get so fed up with the sport, it would be this one thing. And it's people being absolutely asinine and stupid about wanting to bring a team into their market instead of looking at driving 1 extra hour to get somewhere else. Like RJ has said, there's nothing in Connecticut that they can really hang their head on. That's not true. There's just nothing in football that they can hang their head on, especially because it's pretty much equidistance to go to New York or Massachusetts. And honestly, you could slip on a banana peel and end up in a different state. So, it's absolutely ridiculous to me, especially somebody that has to drive 3.5 hours to go to a Green Bay game. And that's the closest franchise that I got, unless I want to go drive 7.5 hours to go watch a West Michigan Ironman game, or 8.5 hours to go to Bismarck or Des Moines or Cedar Rapids. And you've got the scenario where nobody would ever advocate to put a team back in La Crosse, Wisconsin, or Bemidji, Minnesota ever again. But I hear that time and time and time again, that I sit here and be like, don't get off my lawn. But it's that mentality, because your lawn is dead. Like, it's not a market. It's not a thing. Regina Clark, quit trying to make it a thing, because it's never going to be a thing. That's a Mean Girls reference. It's just, I've had enough
it's
of
Regina George, Bryce.
Whatever.
Wow.
Doesn't know about the New England Black Wolves in his backyard, RJ.
Oh, I know they exist. I went to Mohegan Sun Arena the other day for a job fair, looking to potentially do an internship with them, so back off on that.
Oh, back off.
That's okay.
I got to tell you, I'm happy that I don't have to travel an hour now, but I was totally gearing up to travel the 3 hours to Massachusetts, and I still may do it anyways, to watch the Pirates play for the NAL for next year. So, yes, but I agree with you, Bryce. Stop advocating for a market just because you want a team there. Travel. Spend time actually supporting the league and supporting the team closest to you, and just deal with the fact that you may not have a team in your area. We all have to deal with it at some particular point in time. You might as well, if you actually enjoy the league, support the league, go out, travel. If Bryce travels 3 hours to Green Bay, you guys can travel, an hour west or east. That's just my opinion on that one.
And you have interstates.
We do have interstates, yes. I mean, I could get there via back roads, but it would take a lot longer. Maine is one of those things that you start from the southernmost tip to the northernmost tip, and it probably takes just as long. It probably takes longer than travel through all 4 corners of Connecticut. I'm just throwing that out there. You'd probably go all around Connecticut, and it would probably take a shorter distance than it would going from the north to the south side of Maine on the interstate. It's a lengthy drive. Just to get to Massachusetts, Bryce, it's 75% travel in Maine than it is to actually get to Massachusetts. So I don't know if you've ever been to Maine or not, but there's a little geography.
I'm familiar with the map. But I mean that's the weird thing, and I don't know if we'll have time for the 2-minute drill or whatever. But final thought. But I had a geography based one anyway, so my thing.
Go ahead, give us your 2-minute drill right now.
All right, I'll bring it up. Let me pull it up here, because What it is that there was a big shipwreck that was found just a couple days ago in Lake Huron. What it is that two schooners, the Peshtigo and the St. Andrews, were both lost in 1878, and they found them the other day for the first time. The two were amazingly preserved underneath the frigid waters outside Boyne City, Michigan, and it's amazing how these things have kind of came around. And so as both ships left Lake Huron to go into Lake Michigan through the Straits of Mackinac, they got hit up in some fog, and they ended up running into each other and sinking because they ran into each other head on. They found them close to Beaver Island, which is one of the schools that I currently cover on occasion for my job because they play in the same conference with Grand Marais and Munising Baptist. So to know that these two schooners that fought for the Union side in the Civil War were found finally is great.
That's awesome. I actually enjoyed listening to that. I always like hearing about history when we find stuff like that as well. We still got about a minute or so, so if you have a final thought or anything, it's not really quite a 2-minute drill. We'll call it your 1-minute drill. Anything you got for us? I know that you're in Carolina, so.
Just that I've been catching up on some football documentaries recently about upstart leagues. And honestly, if you got time and a YouTube account, go check them out. They're pretty interesting to see what leagues have had to pull to get through a season.
Nice, sounds good. I don't really have anything this week. I just enjoyed a lot of football and basically a lot of good college games this past weekend. Stick around, folks. We have an AFNtalk.com exclusive after the break. We're going to take a quick break. We have an AFNtalk.com 310-876-8064 at AFN Talk across all social media. We have an exclusive interview that's going to be with a indoor co-owner from the MIFL after the break.
The Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.
Welcome back to AFN Live for AFN Talk exclusive interview with co-owner, general manager, head coach, and offensive coordinator. That's a lot of titles of the Jersey Bearcats, AJ Roque. AJ, how you doing? This is Michael Washington Weeks.
How you doing, Michael? Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. We appreciate it. First, I got a question to ask you. What is a Bearcat?
It is a real animal. It almost looks like a sloth. Is what it almost looks like in real life. Oh,
I honestly had no clue that a Bearcat was an actual thing. I guess I should have looked it up.
Yeah, it is.
I thought it was.
I actually didn't figure it out myself until when we named the team. So I wanted to see exactly what it was.
I just thought it might have been like one of those hybrid, like you get those team names like, the Battlehawks of the XFL, It's just,
right.
AJ, you have you studied at Keene University. That's local in New Jersey, correct? So you're from the area. Yeah.
Yes.
You were a former quarterback of the Albany Conquest, the Florida Stingrays, the Harrisburg Stampede, the Erie Storm, and most recently, I'm assuming, the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks of the NAL. Can you just give us a little bit of your, a little bit of what your journey was like, working your way up through to where you're at now with the Bearcats?
Yeah, it all started, Albany Conquest. That's back when Arena 2 was out, so I'm a little old. And, from there, I come from Kean University. Here I am on teams with guys who were at USC and Syracuse and, just guys from all over the place. And then I go to Harrisburg, and I'm on the same field with Savell Newton from South Carolina, who was a runner-up for the Heisman, and Fitz Bowden. And, Woody Danler, first quarterback in NCAA history, spoke with 2,000 yards and rushed for 1,000 yards. Like, it's been one hell of a ride. The experience going through and seeing those type of players. And here I am coming from Division III, with them. That's an experience. It's kind of like an honor because you're watching those guys on TV and then you're on the same field as them.
Yeah, I'm assuming when you're coming from a D3 school like that, you're just kind of sitting there going, man, I don't know. I would love to get a chance to meet so-and-so or play on a field with so-and-so, even just against them, just to be able to watch them play. Yeah, and that must have definitely been it definitely must be like a quite the experience for anybody that's in your shoes. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then I'm throwing the receivers that were at Auburn. Silas Daniels. He has the longest play in Auburn history, actually. TD reception. And it's like those guys that play that. That's major. That's big boy football.
Yeah, this is really cool to hear. I mean, I think that a lot of that goes. I think a lot of that goes unspoken or goes unnoticed. By a lot of fans, especially in the arena and indoor level. That it's such a mesh of people. 5-star recruits that didn't quite pan out to Division III guys or even NAIA guys that are just trying to hold on to the dream to play professionally. Man, that's a pretty cool story though. That's for sure.
Right. Everybody has their own story. Everybody didn't have the right way to get there, but the goal in the end is to get there. To say I was a pro athlete is what everybody's goal is. Either way, whatever way it is that you take to get there, as long as you get there.
Is that how it started for you and your interest in the indoor world? Was you were just kind of like, I just want to continue playing and I'm just going to play it no matter how I can?
And see where it goes, yeah. I don't have, didn't let the pride thing get in the way. Just continue to play and see where it went. The worst thing that can happen is you don't make it. Okay, so life goes on. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. That's a great mentality to have because at least it gives you the idea to be able to appreciate what you have more as far as like what you work towards. This is mine.
And you can't say you never. This. Yeah, and you can't say you have regret. You never tried.
Now, when the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, when they ceased operations, did you try out for any other NAL teams, or did you decide at that point in time that you were going to transition and try to join a little bit of a smaller league, like the major indoor football league, and be like a co-owner of sorts? Was that was your first thought initially was to continue your playing career?
Yeah, when they ceased operations, I was finished already playing. My last year was 2011.
Oh, okay.
With the Steelhawks when they their first year out, and I still talk to Mike Clark today, sometimes about things, and I use my experiences from playing and take everything that I've learned from those owners and put it all together, and that's where me and Jermaine came up and put our thoughts together and created the Bearcats.
Now, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, AJ.
And with all the, wrongdoing that goes on out there in the semi-pro world, it's not fair to these guys. These guys around here deserve a place where they know their money is safe and they're going to get full opportunity to play and continue to play. And that's how we ended up playing, 2 games in the AAL last year because guys, connects that I had, and a couple guys moved up, and a couple guys had tryouts, all from connections, the right people.
Yeah, that's definitely something that that we've learned, or at least I've learned, as far as the arena indoor world is concerned. It's so volatile and so many, a lot of egos involved, and some not so kind things happening, and some players kind of getting the short end of the stick. So it's definitely nice to hear that you got somebody, especially as a former player, so you know what it's like, and you've now transitioned over to the co-ownership. How was that transition for you? Was there a lot of adjustment to it, or was it just, I'm a former player, I'm going to look out for my players type of situation?
Yeah, that too, and seeing the right way organizations were ran. Like John Morris, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He used to have the American Indoor Football Association, and then the AIF, American Indoor Football League. And I mean, he was all about his business and taking care of his players. Because without his business or his players, you have nothing.
Yeah,
without making sure his league wasn't running correct, what does he have behind it? That's his name behind it. Mike Clark and him came in with the Steelhawks. I mean, did an awesome job. They were one of the stable organizations out from how long, football.
Yeah, and I think that's probably that's definitely something that is super important, especially when you're transitioning especially from the player side of things, and then into a co-ownership role and making sure you want to take care of your players and make sure your organization's run. It's all about branding, and
right.
you wanting to brand your team name like that, and you want to put out something like a true franchise for things. So I guess my biggest question, I'm not as familiar with the MIFL, but doing a little research on you, your team made the championship game last year.
Yeah, our first year in existence, we go 9-0 regular season, get to championship game, and we lose 24-18.
Oh, it must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. Offense, defense, I mean, they played lights out. I know 24 points is on the board, but in the arena game, when you have 4 goal line stops, I mean, your defense is playing pretty well.
Yeah,
offense, we just couldn't get it together on offense to help out our defense.
Well, I'm sure the expectations for 2020 and the 2020 season is definitely going to be for a championship victory.
Somebody's got to seal that rat. June 22nd is all we think about. That from that day, somebody has to feel that pain from that day. Somebody has to do it.
And realistically, you're probably going to have a similar squad to come back and be able to achieve that goal. I'm assuming, or at least I'm hoping.
Yeah, and we're actually going to have 2 teams next year. We're going to expand.
Oh, really? Okay. Where else are you expanding to?
Yeah, so we're going to go into the MAIFL and also have a team in the MIFL.
Okay.
So the MAIFL is where the Reading Raptors played last year.
Yep.
That's the league we're going into, and we're also going to stay in the same league we're just in the MIFL. So because we're getting a lot of interest, and we don't want to not have people come out and play and continue this thing rolling. Because the first year, we swear, it went too smooth. Like, there was no hiccup. It was just too smooth where it was like, all right, well, something has to go wrong. And it didn't. So, and we're getting all this interest, so we don't want to hold nobody back. So we're like, all right, well, let's continue. Let's continue moving here. So we're going to have 2 teams for next season.
Well, best of luck to you in both leagues and in both situations, and hopefully everything still runs, fairly smooth. I mean, obviously you want to face some sort of adversity once in a while so you can at least adapt to it and grow from it. Right. But at the same time, hey, you got a little bit of that adversity with the loss in the championship game in the MIFL FL level, so maybe 2020 will be your season in both leagues. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Bring home 2 championships.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal. And we have some guys that are coming out that we can definitely get it done.
Well, best of luck for you, for sure, for the 2020 season. AJ, before we wrap up this interview here a little bit, anything that you want to say, anything that we can get a hold of, anywhere we can get a hold of you as far as social media is concerned? Do you have tryouts coming out for anybody in the New Jersey area? How can they get a hold of you through contact information of that sort? Just anything that pertains to your team and how to be able to get a hold of you if there is a player interested in coming out.
Yeah, they can go two options. They can email us, Jersey Bearcats Arena Football at gmail.com, or they can go on to our website, jerseybearcatsfootball.com, and they can register for the tryout there and also, input their contact information, and we reply back to everybody. We don't leave no message, unanswered.
Yeah, this sounds good to there. AJ, do you have any tryouts coming out anytime soon? Is there any dates that are going to be released?
Yes, first tryout's going to be October 5th, 1 p.m. Check-in's going to start at 11:45 at the Sportsplex at Metuchen in Metuchen, New Jersey.
Well, I would personally like to thank you, AJ, for joining us tonight, co-owner, GM, head coach, and offensive coordinator of the Jersey Bearcats at the MIFL. Good luck to you in the 2020 season. There's tryouts coming out for anybody that's interested in the Jersey Bearcats. We appreciate you joining us tonight, AJ. It's been a pleasure, man.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Washington Weeks, AFN Live, AFNtalk.com, at AFN Talk across all social media as well. That's going to do it for tonight's show. We'll catch you next Sunday here. Sunday, I already said that, 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific.